Then you can see the presentation?
Yes, we can see your presents, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'm glad to take part in this seminar and lecture. I present about Sambor Prei Kuk monument and study about planning method of temple with previous studies. In this seminar and lecture, Dr. Sokuntari presented about Sambor Prei Kuk monument and activities of conservation and restoration. In my presentation, especially I would like to present about design method and their importance. Okay. I present about contents as below in my presentation. At first, it is about overview of Sambor Prei Kuk monument, and second is history. I introduce about study history of method of design in previous studies. Next, I present about analysis in Sambor Prei Kuk monument, and I introduce about comparing with temples in Angkor period. Sambor Prei Kuk monuments are located in Kampong Thom, Cambodia, and known as huge-scale heritage city. There are a total of 134 archaeological sites, 288 lake or waterlight temples scattered in 12 kilometer square area, and ancient city surrounded by 2 kilometers square, and natural rivers, motorway, old road, approach road, artificial pond, and many elements of a city. And Sambor Prei Kuk registered regarded as capital city in times of terror. And not only that, the monuments are function a city and constructed and renovated the site continuously from 6th century to Angkor period. The description of Sambor Prei Kuk monuments found in Chinese historical documents, Suishu, and written records on the Western regions. And inscription. In this inscription, it is described as Ishanapla. The meaning of Ishanapla, Ishana means northeast, and Pura means the political unit in ancient Khmer times. And Dr. Ichita Shimoda estimated easily that the population of Ishanapla is more than 100,000 people, and scale of Ishanapla was large city in times of ancient period in the world, based on analysis of history book. The scale of city is so large compared to other city monuments of the same period. It is excavated some inscriptions in Sambor Prei Kuk monument. There is evidence of city ages in the description. For example, in inscription number K151, it is described about Babarman first and Mahendra Barman and Ishana Barman first as a name of king. So that some Prei Kuk monument estimated that were functioned as city at least the time of Babarman first. And the inscription number K438 It is described about complements to Ishan Barman first. In addition to that, the word of Ishanapla is found in K 438. In this inscription number K 436, it is described about complements to Rajendra Barman II, and Rajendra Barman converted the central figure to Kamshubala. From like those of inscriptions, the historical fact review. That is, Sambor Prei Kuk monuments are estimated that have been functioned as a city at least time of Babarman first, and regarded Sambor Prei Kuk monument as Ishanapla, and functioned between Angkor period continuously. Then next, I introduced about overview of history research in Sambor Prei Kuk. In 1894, French researchers in the field discovered the monument and conducted basic research. Then the research was continued, and Parmentier positions the architectural style in Sambor Prei Kuk as primitive style in Khmer history. In 1938, Corbel reviews the entire figure of city from aerial photographs. In aerial study of inscription, major chronological observation was submitted by inscription researchers in early and middle of 1960s. In 1960s, extensive research and survey is conducted in city area and temple area, especially in area of archaeological and iconographical study. However, the research and study by FL interrupted because of civil war in Cambodia. The research and survey were suspended and stagnant in Sambor Prei Kuk monument. From end of civil war in Cambodia in 1991, Waseda University in Japan started to survey. Waseda University considered that Sambor Prei Kuk monument is important in Khmer history, and funding of Sambor Prei Kuk conservation project with Ministry of Culture and Finance. In 2017, Sambor Prei Kuk monuments registered as World Heritage Site. Sambor Prei Kuk conservation project is inaugurated between survey team in Waseda University and the Ministry of Culture and Finance. A variety of activities have been carried out so far. For example, like clearance work and recording and reconstruct work, and restoration of the shrines. And about great works of restoration by conservation project, authority, and many organizations, it was presented by Professor Secondary maybe 2 weeks ago. So I skip over in my presentation. Then I introduced about the unit of measure based on human scale in ancient world. For example, in Japan, some types of lengths are found in historical documents. In Japan, the types of lengths are found in historical documents. And tsuka is based on length of finger. Ata is based on the length of hand. And hiro is based on the length of arms. Especially the description that the method of design, the grade and copying is found based on hiro in ancient documents. In Mesopotamia, the major rural of cubit is excavated in ancient city Nippon. The unit of cubit is about 570.2 millimeter, and it is divided into 6 parts and 24 digit. Digit is based on length of finger. The unit of cubit is estimated about 496 millimeters in city of Lagan. And the length of cubit is based on the length of the king's arm. For the this is the statue. In ancient India, many types of lengths are described in architectural documents. Mayamata, Manasara, and so on. This angular is based on the length of finger. And Vitasti is based on the length of palm. And Hasta is based on the length of elbow. In architectural document, huge number of unit systems are described in the document. These types of lengths have each purpose of using. Especially, it is described that the unit of hasta and danu equal for hasta is used for architecture and furniture. And the unit of yojana is used for measurement of land. Many weights and measures based on human scale. However, the weights and measures based on human scale are different for each person and not constant. It's a related weights and measures. In ancient times, as dynasties changed, often the weights and the measures could change too. The standardization of weights and measures is regarded as stage of national development and assert king's authority. In order for weights and measures to function, it is necessary to standardization the weights and measures. So the weight and measures based on human scale of a specific person are standard of standardization. It's said an absolute weight and measures. National construction work national construction work is needed to standardization the weights and measures. Then I introduced about study about measures in Khmer. In Khmer, the history of study about measures begin with Louis Pinot in French. Louis Pinot made an assertion that the Yama equal about 1.6 or 1.7 meter is used based on interpretation of inscriptions.
ภาพฉากหนังยุคสมัยคริสต์สมัยก่อนที่แบบต้องมีการ
Okay, and George says the Pyama about 2 meter and 4 hasta. And hasta equal about 450 millimeters. Is used based on interpretation of inscription too. And then Sebastian so analyzes the dimension of central part of Angkor Wat and made an assertion that hat means hasta about 28.7583 centimeter and module of length is 25 centimeter was used for construction. And Elena and Monica discussed about the module of construct Angkor Wat and argued that the module is about 436 millimeters. In Japan, Chubachi made an assertion that the dimensional plan was used about 436 millimeters based on analysis of the South Supra. And then Chia argued that the module of length was used 485 millimeters. The study about unit of measure and dimensional plan is divided into interpretation of inscription and analysis based on actual measurement survey. Study about unit of measures and dimensional plan divided into the actual lengths of unit are not constant for each researchers. But the unit of length has almost about 400 to 500 millimeters. And Professor Mizoguchi in JSA, he analyzed based on actual measurement surveys and conclude that the unit of measures hasta is about 412 millimeters and Yama is for hasta. Compared with other researchers, the analysis object is more in his study. And he studied about dimensional plan and method of design. But the analysis object constructed in Angkor period. In Sambor Prei Kuk monuments, the architecture study is not abandoned compared to its importance. The measure of ruler is not excavated in Khmer history. So it is necessary to analyze its complex and each monument and consider the dimensional design and method of design based on previous studies. Sambor Prei Kuk monuments are represented site in pre-Angkor period and analysis object in many of previous studies are constructed in Angkor period. So it is necessary to compare it between the Angkor period and Angkor period. And in order to estimate the dimensional design and method of design, the dimensions of inner chamber and the main room and basement extracted based on precise measurement survey by Sambor Prei Kuk Conservation Project. The actual dimensions of important parts for planning the tower assumes that the dimensions are planned based on integral number of dimensional design, referred to previous studies. For example, This is the main tower in Prasad Sambor, and it is estimated planning of methods through the analysis is like this. At first, provides the planning of scale in the chamber, main room, and basement. And next, providing the 8-unit grid plan around the center of inner chamber. And next, assignment in corner of main room, 3 unit and 5 unit. And next, assignment for unit in center of the plate plan in order to construct the entrance. Finally, construct the linga and yoni. The diameter is 3 units. This is estimated basic planning in central tower in Prasad Sambor. In central tower of Prasad Sambor, the value of unit is estimated about 407.9 millimeter. The number is close to Hasta in Angkor period. On the other hand, the little difference of dimensions is difficult to consider. The causes could have been that object of analysis is not temple complex, but single tower, or difference of construction method between sandstone, laterite, and bricks in materials. In the basic planning method of main tower in Prasad Sambor, and low parts relate with 4 unit. In the chamber scale, 12 unit, and main room scale, 20 unit. Basement scale is 24 unit, and basic grid brown is 8 unit, and the entrance is 4 unit. In previous studies, scale of Biama is regarded as 4 Hasta. So there is a possibility that similar scale of dimensions was used in Angkor period. And this is a result of analysis in Prasad Sambor temple. The average of unit value approximate to 410 millimeter. On the other hand, the standard deviation value is large in the plan of rectangle form. In previous studies, the towers of rectangle plan placed in initial times of triangle period by ladder chain. The causes could have been that the difference of technique and times of construction, but it is necessary to consider carefully. The difference of unit value could be due to difference of technique and times of construction too. However, any other possibility cause could be due to subordinate dimension system. In Indian architecture documents, use several different types of hasta with angular additions, and it is not studied about subordinate dimension system, but it may be necessary to analyze this possibility in the future. Through the result of the analysis of the various towers, it is difficult to find a clear tendency in each main part of plan full scale. The towers of rectangle plan situated between middle enclosure and upper enclosure. The fractional dimensions are seen in main bursts compared to square plan situated in inner enclosure. So there is a possibility that the construction method is different between square plan and rectangle plan. And next is overview of the analysis of complex in Sambor Prei Kuk. In Sambor Prei Kuk, there are three main complexes in temporal area. Three complexes of temples are analyzed based on unit value and compared with each complexes. The planning overview of Prasad Sambor Temple is like this. In this presentation, I introduced mainly about the feature of basic planning and deflection of access. In Prasad Sambor of North Group, the four towers are evenly positioned at the four corners with the central tower. The planning of inner enclosure is square, and there is no deflection in the arrangement of the towers and plan of the inner wall. The entire complex in inner enclosure is centripetal planning. About the middle enclosure of Prasad Sambor, the east-west axis is centered in east and west side, and north-south axis is not centered in north and south sides. Therefore, the middle enclosure deflects to the west against the central tower. In Prasad Yepuan of South Group, inner enclosure is rectangular with long north and south sides. The basic plan seems that it's based on a square planning and 400 unit square planning and reduced by 10 units in east side. The east-west axis deflect 4 units to the south, and the planning of axis is seemed to avoid going through the center. Outer enclosure of Prasad Yepuan is rectangular with strong east and west side. East-west axis is identical to that of inner enclosure, and the north-south axis deflect to the west. Finally, in Prasad Town of Central Group, inner enclosure is rectangle with strong east and west side, and east-west axis deflect 4 units to the south. And north-south axis deflect 20 minutes to the west. So the planning of axis is to avoid going through the center. Outer enclosure of Prasad Town is rectangular with long east and west side. East-west axis is identical to that of inner enclosure, and north-south axis depressed to the west compared with that of inner enclosure. The three complexes of each group are below. In the analysis of the complexes, focusing the arrangement of central tower and the deflection of axis, Prasad Sambor is distinctive in the complexes. In Prasad Sambor, the central tower is situated in center of the inner enclosure. In addition to that, the central tower situated in the east of the middle enclosure. The central towers are situated in southwest of inner and outer enclosure in Prasad Tau and Prasad Yepon. About the deflection of axis, the axis is not deflected in inner enclosure, and south-north axis deflect to the east in middle enclosure. Each axis deflect to the southwest in inner and outer enclosure of Prasad Tau and Prasad Yepon. The situation of central tower and deflection of axis distinctive in three complexes, especially Prasad Sambor. And in previous studies, for example, in Tomanon Temple, the basic plan is estimated that 100 units square, and east and west side is reduced by 1.5 units based on basic plan. And north and south sides is added by 12.5 unit based on basic plan. The axis of the temple is deflected to the southwest as a result. And Prasad Tomb in Koke monuments, the east-west axis shift to the south. The two-third hasta. The method of deflection is necessary to distinct from the method just mentioned in Tomanon Temple. In Angkor period, the method of deflection the axis divided into two types. First type is add or reduce from basic plan, and the second type is shift the axis itself. In Sambor Prei Kuk monuments, the method of deflection belongs to type 2. In most east-facing temples, the central shrine is situated in southwest in gallery or enclosure, and access are about to go through the center of complex in Angkor period. However, the axis is not deflected in inner enclosure of Prasad Sambor. And in addition to that, the north-south axis is deflected to the east. This is a unique feature that cannot be found in other temples. Through the analysis, some of the results of dimensional plan and planning method were obtained in Sambor Prei Kuk monuments. At first, the unit of value used in the construction were found to approximate to hasta in the Angkor period. However, the unit values obtained through the analysis vary depending on the remains. The causes of dispersion could be differences of construction period or result of expansion and renovation and construction errors and so on. It is necessary to consider so carefully. In order to improve accuracy of unit value, it is necessary to analyze the detailed parts and increase the number of the object. For example, this is the elevation of basement. In analysis of method of planning, the planning method is distinctive in Sambor Prei Kuk monument. It is necessary to compare with planning methods of our other temples and to illustrate the stage of design method within them. Especially, the axis and planning in Prasad Sambor is particularly unique among the three complexes and temples in Angkor period. The causeway trace is excavated in the east of Prasad Sambor, so it is said that Prasad Sambor faces to east, unlike Angkor Wat that faces to the west. In the temple face to east, the axis centered in an enclosure, and the north-south axis effect to the east uniform. By locating the uniqueness of the site in the context of Khmer history, we can further deepen our understanding of Sambor Prei Kuk monuments, and it may become a factor in understanding the aspects of Khmer architectural history. Thank you.